So like what Maxim was saying earlier, cueing is a skill that is best learned by experience. So it's something that we'll all learn how to do eventually. When you start as a new instructor, it is a little bit of an intimidating skill because you want to be able to command the class and have that kind of presence and the ability to use a concise enough cue to portray what you need without sacrificing form or technique. So it is a skill, absolutely. With Insanity, it's a little bit different of a format because you can get away with not having a sense of musicality and you can still cue Insanity. It's not like that for a lot of formats, but I will tell you, and some of you have already figured this out, when you listen to Insanity and you listen to the music, it's 30 seconds. 30 seconds is 2 32-count phrases of music, right? And so some of you hear that just naturally, and you hear when that 15 seconds is, and then you just switch on over to the other side if we have to switch, that kind of thing. That big foghorn that goes off, that thing, that is actually 8 counts before the next phrase. So you can do it where you actually switch on the foghorn, and some people do that. They hear the foghorn and then they say, all right, we're going into this next move, and they just start it. Or you can wait for the musical phrase, and you can hear that 8 count, and usually what we say in cueing in musical terms is it's 1, 2, 3, 4, now I start to cue. All right, and then the 5, 6, 7, 8 is when you're cueing the next move. So when you hear the foghorn, that's 8 counts. You do 4 more counts, give the little cue, and then you start to move on beat 1. But that's your decision as an Insanity instructor. If you want to stay on the beat, for me, I have a master's in music, I can't not do it. I have to be on the 1 count phrase. Like if I hear that phrase, that's where it has to start. But some people can not do that, and so they do it with a foghorn. Your decision, you make that, but stay consistent throughout the class, otherwise your class will get really confused. The other thing that happens is when that foghorn comes on, people do this. I'm waiting, what's next, right? And they just stand there and they don't really know what's happening. So if you give that cue a little bit ahead of time, say, not yet, give me a couple more moves, all right, squat jumps, and then go into it. So don't cue too early that they're standing and staring at you. All right, so into more cueing. Can somebody give me an example of a cue that you think? What is a cue?
2 right knees.
2 right knees, good. Perfect, awesome. More cues.
Push through your heels.
Push through your heels, fantastic.
Sit back in that chair and do your chest.
Beautiful, all right, anything else?
Dig deeper.
That's right, what about dig deep, y'all? That kind of stuff, right? And you know, Shaun T does it in the music. Every time he says it, I make fun of him. I'm sorry, I always like, Shaun T says dig deep, let's dig deep. You know, he does. So, all of you gave me great cues. So, 2 right knees. What is that? What kind of cue is that? Right, it's an instructional cue. What we call it right here is an anticipatory cue. Right? So the anticipatory cues are what you use in order to warn people of the move that's coming up, right? Somebody else said, push through your heels. What is that a cue?
Technique.
Technique, form, that kind of thing. What that's called is a descriptive cue. Now, as we were talking about earlier, you can't give a long-winded explanation about like, hinge from the hips, squeeze through your glutes, drive through your heels. Pick a couple of nice phrases and then throw those out there so that people can get them and take it with them. So that's a descriptive cue. What's dig deep? Motivational cues, my personal favorite, right? There's so many things you can say. So kind of the way that we do it is that you give an anticipatory cue so that they know what's coming up. Then, when you're going through that first 15 seconds, give them some descriptive cues, stuff that says, like, drive through your heels, keep your chest lifted, that kind of stuff. Stuff that's going to help them get better into the form. Then in that last 15 seconds, that's when they're starting to get tired. So you got to give them some descriptive cues if you see people failing on form, but that's when you can also be like, dig deeper, you only have 15 more seconds, come on. That kind of stuff to get them motivated and keep going. So those are the 3 types of cues. But we also have different kinds of cueing within those types. So there's visual and verbal cueing. So we're going to talk about verbal cueing first. That's on your next page.
There's the theater.
The big reveal, right? All right. So With verbal cueing, on here it says, even with impeccable form and commanding presence, you need to have a clear, concise verbal cueing skills to have a positive impact on your class. Keep in mind that less is more in verbal cueing. Choose your words wisely and strive to provide the largest impact with the least amount of words possible. So that's something that you really have to train yourself on. That's one of the obstacles I had to really overcome because I want to keep talking. You know, when the music starts, I'm like, keep doing it, blah, 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 blah. And all these words are coming out of my mouth. And I had to be like, all right, say the words and then let it sink in and give them the time. And so that's something that is a hard thing to think about because you're going to be like, they're going to hate me if I'm silent the whole time. They're not.
Yeah,
They're
not
just
true.
processing,
Yeah.
right?
Lindsay, real quick.
Yes.
Just to add to that, it's in one of our webinars, Will Brenton, he's the UK guy in charge for Insanity, and he gave a really good explanation of that set one. He said, introduce the move, provide a modification, shut up. That's it. Introduce the move, provide a modification, and be quiet.
Yeah.
Let the music guide.
Absolutely. Let them get into it. You'll find that if you say something and you do an anticipatory cue and you give them that move, and then you immediately start talking about something else, they've forgotten the move already, right? And so then they're like, what am I doing? I don't know what's happening here. And then they get confused, and then they're not going to get as good of a workout. So really, really give them that time for it to sink in and for you to watch them. And use that time to walk around the room and find things that you can find and tweak with individual people. So there's also feeling cues, like it said. Those are the descriptive cues. Those are for different kinds of learners. You know, so we have visual, we have auditory, and we have kinesthetic learners, right? With kinesthetic learners, they need more of the stuff that's like drive through your heels, squeeze through your glutes, stuff that really talks about the actual movement and the way they're going to feel the movement. So try and incorporate all different kinds of cues in there. Vocal pitch and tonality. So in any kind of class, you notice if I was talking up here the whole time and I was doing my presentation like this, you'd get really annoyed really fast. Right? You're like, I don't do anything else. Why is she up there, right? So it's a hard thing to do, and especially for women, and I'm sorry, but it is hard for women to take that cue and take it all the way down, especially when we get excited. And this goes for men too. When anybody gets excited, you start to take your voice up with your excitement, and then it gets really, really hot. So remind yourself during those times to stay in a lower pitch tonality. Now, this is a little singer secret that I have to talk to you about. A lower pitch does not mean a vocal fry. So when you do a vocal fry, a lot of people, especially in today's day and age, think it's really cool to talk like this, and they have this little grind in their voice, right? And that does that. That's terrible for your voice. So if you want to preserve your voice for all of teaching and teach for years and years and years and years, take it low, but it still needs to be a full voice. You need to use your full breath in that voice and use your tonality a little bit into it. So this is my forte, if you will, you know, because this, talking about the voice and talking about the different ways you can use your voice is really what I do the best. So you have a total gamut of where you can use your voice. So in Insanity, a lot of times when you're talking about motivational cues, you got to get really deep with them, you know. Dig deep, y'all, you can do this right here, you know, really low, getting that kind of boot camp style with your voice. But then there's other times where you get a little quiet, right? Those times before that third set. I know you can do this. We're tired, it's okay. We're going to push through. This is going to happen. How hard can you go? Use those tones, use the whisper. Try and make it match the tonality of the music. So if you're going really hard, make your voice harder. If you're in that place of rest, take it down a little bit. Give them that energy that goes with the music, because that's when you create that really cool atmosphere. People are like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to dig deeper, right? And so use the gamut of your voice. Play with it. Stay in front of the mirror, practice those cues, see how your facial expressions go with the cues, and see how you can practice. I'm being serious. If you want to be an amazing instructor, you do have to have that element with it, where you use your voice to its fullest capacity. So, keep going. So will somebody read for me tips for verbal cueing? Spit everywhere. Tips for verbal cueing. Don't spit on your participants. Anybody?
Oh, the bottom. I got you.
Yes,
Yep.
at the bottom.
Deep in pitch.
Sorry.
Very loudness to match the energy of the format.
Right.
Avoid yelling or screaming into the microphone. Keep the microphone 1 to 2 inches from your mouth. Keep cues short and concise. Turn the music volume down when you need to say something important or cue a complicated section. Avoid verbal tics or repeating words or phrases often.
Beautiful. Does anybody know what a verbal tick is?
Ooh, ooh.
Good. Yeah.
Have you had an instructor do that the whole class ever? Oh, those are verbal tics.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Now, it's okay to throw up a whoop whoop every once in a while, but it's not okay to do it every 15 seconds, right? So you have to watch for those verbal tics. I'm going to let you know right now, I shouldn't be revealing this because if you ever come to my class, you'll hear it immediately. But my verbal tic is hit right there. I'm actually saying hit, but you can't know what I'm saying. But anytime, I'm like hit, that kind of stuff, because I want you to go harder. And that's what I do. I'm curving it a lot, because when you videotape yourself, you learn all kinds of things. But sometimes we just pick up those little phrases and we just say them, and it comes naturally. Maxim, have you told the story about where Dig Deep came from?
Not yet. You can.
Can I tell
Yeah,
it?
of course.
All right. So, I thought this was kind of funny when I did my personal training. During the taping of Insanity, Sean T kept saying, dig deep, dig deep, dig deep. And the producers were like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And so
That was his
he
verbal tick.
thought about it, and he was like, okay. And he talked about, I don't actually remember what he said dig deep meant, but you know, he was like, this is actually meaning something to me. You know, I want people to push harder and to dig deeper. Go ahead.
And it's basically just look within yourself, dig deep within yourself, and bring that out.
Right.
That's all it is, really.
And it's a beautiful sentiment, but what's funny about it is it started as a verbal tick, right? Because he said, dig deep every couple of seconds, and so the producer was like, you need to have some sort of meaning with that, otherwise you can't say dig deep, right? And so he did have meaning, so not all verbal ticks are bad, sometimes they can turn into a catchphrase for your entire workout industry.
Yeah.
However, most of them, you gotta curve a little bit, just watch it. And a lot of people don't even know you're doing it. So if you're a new instructor, talk to some friend after class, somebody you're close to, be like, do I say anything weird? And if they're like, yeah, you say it all the time. And it's like, okay, I gotta do that. My fiance had to give me that moment where he was like, yeah, you said it. And it was one of those things. But just find that way. You will get better at cueing. Like I said, the more you practice, the better you